Happy Mother's Day. Dominic, you have kids? Genevieve, Pranavati, Irina, Jenna, Hope, Lana. Do you have? Nope, nope. Sia, Aaron, and Dylan. Wow.
And Tish.
And me. Love you, Mom. Boy, it doesn't matter what you do. I've had that, it's kind of an interesting question. I've always found that song really interesting because in some ways I think it matters completely what you do, and in some ways I think it doesn't really matter in the bigger scheme of things. So it's just kind of according to how you're needing to hear it at the time, I guess. You know, if I die, will you replace me with someone else? You know? Yeah. I'm not quite sure where to jump in. It's been such an interesting time. My mom just passed last January, so this is my first Mother's Day. Telling her, thank you, Mom, from a different place. But there's been a number of things, you know, the trip to Kenya, my mom passing, just, you know, retiring from teaching ballet or Pilates, and, you know, having just sort of a very wide open life in front of me, and feeling just like, whoa, wide open. I haven't had that maybe ever. And just in this last period of time, I feel like I've walked through some doors. The doors were wide open. I didn't have to walk through them, but I feel like I did. And it's interesting. I'm remembering back, way back in Santa Barbara when I had first met Justin. Maybe I'd known him for about a year, and I was just starting to get more involved with the school. And I remember going home to being at this place where some people were living, the greenhouse, and going home to my little apartment on Olive Street. And I remember going in and sitting in my living room and just thinking, you know, I don't think I'm going to turn back. I think I'm just going to walk through this door. And it, you know, it was significant. I had been a ballet dancer for years and living, you know, with a very kind of private, exclusive life. And all of a sudden, here's this Justin. And you know what whoa. And I was hanging around enough to where I was starting to get some input. And, you know, it was one of those, boy, my life looked wide open ahead of me. And was I going to walk through that door? And when I was sitting in that chair thinking, I think I might have already walked through it. I don't think I'm going to be able to turn back. And I didn't. I never did. And so this is a lot of years later. And again, one of those times where it's not like I'm walking through the door to be a part of the school or to pursue the ideas, but more like that I feel like I've walked through a door of commitment, that I feel my commitment more than I've ever felt it before. Like I don't have anything else that needs to distract me from proceeding forward with this adventure, this whatever you want to call it, ascension. So I'm going to give you just one little snippet, and then I want to talk about an idea from a book that I've just finished reading and have been going back over certain parts with Sia. But I was at the dentist the other day, and it was having some work done, and I had to be in the chair for about 2 hours. So, when you got somebody's hands in your mouth and that drill, it's pretty uncomfortable. So I'd feel my hands like this, and then my shoulders are up by my ears, and I thought, why don't you just relax? Okay. And then about 3 seconds later, I'd be like this again. Why don't you just relax? And so, and then I kept thinking, why can't I relax for more than 3 seconds? And I realized that my attention span is about 3 seconds. That's about what it is. Because later that day I was trying to meditate, and it was the same. This monster is going much more than you realize until you try to relax, and then you got 3 seconds, and then you're, up by your shoulders again. It's quite extraordinary. So, Justin says, I teach awareness. At least I had the awareness to say, why don't you relax? But the mind took over very quickly, and it does. And it does, and it does. So to try to remember these tools that we have, we just have to keep plugging away, because it might go to 4 seconds, and then it might go to 5 seconds, and sometime we might actually be able to be here for a little while. That would be a good thing. So, if anybody gets cold, there's some blankets over there. I've been reading, finished actually at this point, the Lawrence Vanderpost books of A Story Like the Wind and A Far Off Place. And at the end of that second book is some of the richest material that I think I've ever read. There's a character in there that's an old hunter and a very wise man, and Francois, this young boy. Most everybody probably has read this and knows the story a little bit, but Francois has escaped a massacre. He's spent over a year going through the desert with a couple of Bushmen people that he happened to meet through different, I'm not going to tell too much of the story because you should read the book. But at the end, he finally makes it to the coast, going through the desert for months and months and months and months and making it. And they contact Mopani, the old hunter, who was very close to their family. And he flew in, and in the book it describes the conversation that Mopani was having with Francois. So Francois was brought up in Africa, and his family, his relatives had been maybe 300 years moving from Europe, 300 years previous, to Africa with the hopes of starting a new life, starting over, starting a new life, walking through whatever doors were there. And at the end of a certain period of time, they would start to become disillusioned and like it wasn't working, so they would feel the need to then go further into the interior of Africa to start a new life again. And then inevitably, the same thing would happen. The troubles would reappear. Things wouldn't work out. They couldn't get people to go along with the way that they were seeing that things could be done. And so they would then leave their comfortable situation, because they were not poor people coming from Europe. They were people with substance and just wanted to try something, a new life. So they would move further into the interior. And so down the line, about 300 years, here's Francois, this young boy, having been brought up with very natural people, native people, African tribal people, and the influence of a Bushman nanny, and life in the bush, life in the wild, and living very close to very natural people. And the point that Vanderpost was making was, it's almost a cliche now, wherever you go, you find yourself there. It's like everybody's heard. And that was what was happening. They had troubles, but they were reaching out exteriorly to try to start a new life. But inevitably, because there they were with, their troubles were not out there, their troubles were in here. And until that is addressed, there is no new life. There is no new life. Not exteriorly. So Mopani is sitting with Francois, saying, he had watched the deterioration of a lot of the world. He lived through World War II. He was a prisoner of war in Japan. He lived through some things and had a tremendous depth and an incredible writer. And there were things he was watching the natural world, in Europe at least, disappear. And he was saying it's happening in Africa too. Africa, the one continent that still has a soul, it's happening here too. So he was saying to Francois, I want you to really take a stand. Don't go try to set up a new life somewhere. Get some education, grow up, get things set up, and then take a stand towards being a natural man, towards preserving the natural man. So is that not what we are attempting to do here? I could take my everything open in front of me and do a lot of different things. But the direction that I'm feeling pulled to go in is the interior, not the exterior. I don't need any more exterior. I've had plenty of that in my life. It's been great, It's been challenging, but it's been great. But the interior needs some work. It needs a little bit longer than 3 seconds of attention span. And thankfully, a lot of years ago, ran into Justin. I was still dancing full time with the ballet company in Santa Barbara, checking some things out because I was pretty dissatisfied. It always ended up in the same thing. I'd go to a new place in a new ballet company and start my life all over again, new set of friends, new repertoire, the different things. And then after a year or two, I'd start feeling kind of depressed again and empty. So I'd move on to the next place, and that went on for years until I ended up in Santa Barbara. And then, once again, oh my God, empty, a little depressed again. What the, So I was looking around and going to talks, and somebody said, my friend's teacher is giving a big talk at UCSB tomorrow night. You want to go? I went, sure. So I went to UCSB, and there was one of the big halls. There were 200 people there, and I think I might have told this story before. Justin came out to talk. I don't remember a single word that he said, not one word. But I remember just feeling, and I was sitting way up there in the back, something just magnetized me right down at the end. This is before cell phones. He said, if anybody's interested in coming back again, come down, give us your telephone number. So I remember walking down and walking up, kind of really wasn't quite sure what was happening. It was like and those eyes, and gave him my telephone number, and I got a call a few days later. There was a much smaller gathering in a bank, and I went to that, Then I went to the next one, and I never stopped. That, I walked through that door, but very peripheral for a while. So then jump ahead a year, sitting in my living room. I think I'm going to walk through another door, and then there've been a few doors, but this one feels significant to me because the commitment to uncovering the natural human being feels very attractive. Feels really attractive, I've experienced enough of just little pieces of that if I can apply myself to what I have been taught, then there's an uncovering of that which is natural that is going to happen. And Justin has put in decades into his firm ground that he stands on, that this is the way you can do this. You don't have to think of enlightenment, as he's been talking about. You can think of uncovering what is natural in you, the natural human being that's capable of the finer emotions, that's capable of real love, empathy, compassion, being a servant, And so how do you do that? Well, as he says, I teach awareness. And so these tools build awareness. When there's awareness, then you can see what is. You can see yourself as you are. I think the hardest thing about that part is, knowing what's negative, knowing what's the low road instead of the high road, and you find all of a sudden somebody says, did you see this thing that you just did? Oh my God, and then you want to change it immediately. And I think that's one of the hardest parts, is like, no, that's not the idea. The idea is to see what is. That's why you're building awareness, so that you can see what is, and not to try to erase it immediately, but to sit there with it. To sit there and think, okay, I have about 3 seconds that I can relax my body. About 3 seconds before I'm talking to myself again. That's a good thing to know, because that inspires me then to use the tools, the tools that some people have been getting some input about lately, this one about physical movements. How many seconds can you do that? The more you put the effort into that, the longer it's going to be. The longer the awareness is, the more chance you have to see what's in the way. What have you covered yourself with? Out of necessity. You're not a bad person. What's covering that natural capacity, that natural human being? And so you get a chance to see that. The study of negative emotions happening constantly. If I weren't sitting in the dinner's chair, I probably wouldn't realize how tense I was. Do I realize how many negative emotions are floating through there, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other? There's a way to study that. And there's a way to build the awareness so that you can see that. That's why he calls it an indirect method, because you build the capacities to see things as they are, to see yourself as you are. And when you have that, you have a chance of uncovering the natural man. So that's the door I just walked through. And I think it's probably helped to have found a new love for the process, because if you don't love the process, it can, you can spend a lot of time saying, I don't want to see that. Or, no, I didn't do that. Or, no, that's not me. But it could also be a very joyful process. You can say, oh my God, thank you for pointing that out to me. It's very good to see that, you know. Not that I'm not that, but seeing it is going to start a process. So, man, you know, and what a life to live in this outrageous place, taking fantastic trips, getting to hang out with very far out people, you know, being exposed to so much depth in the books and the songs and the movies, and just getting to fill up with fineness, of learning how to go from coarse to fine, getting finer and finer and finer by not being afraid to see yourself as you are, you know, by appreciating that, loving the process. So I feel very committed to all of you, to the school, to, you know, and gosh, you know, I am a mother, but I feel like a new mother of, you know, mothers take care of their children. Mothers take care of a lot of things, and I feel ready for that challenge, you know, like I don't have anything else pulling me, so I might as well become a really good mother. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to. I think that might be it for me. Do you want to do a song? And then, yeah, maybe we'll have a song and then we'll have another speaker.
It's funny, I've heard people ask the question, does anybody ever graduate from this school? And after witnessing what I just witnessed, what we just witnessed with Tish, like, oh my God, I just feel so honored to have a friend with that being, that level of being, you know, and in progress for more, but just like, I feel very privileged and honored to know you, Tish, and she's one of many people that I feel that way about. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. I think in a way it should be called Happy Women's Day. I mean, I think that it's women keep this all going. I mean, obviously women are mothers and we're all products of mothers and like that, but even after that women, mothers or not, women are just keep this whole world going, to keep our planet going, and just thank God. Men are pretty much driving it in the other direction, you know, and women just keep it together, and just thank God for women. I want to say a little bit about Mother's Day and tell a few little stories, and because I just spent some time with my mother a week ago, and I feel like I did really well on the mother lottery. And a week ago, I met my mom, who lives in Wisconsin with my sister, on the Oregon coast in Tillamook, Oregon, and we rented an Airbnb. And my brother was there for a night because he'd been with her, and he dropped her off, and we were all together for a night. And then he went home, and then she and I had 3 nights together, just the two of us. And it was the first time, I think maybe ever, but for sure in decades, that I've had that time with her just one-on-one and not with distractions. And she we just had this beautiful, beautiful few days together. And her name's Darlene, and she goes by Dar, and she turns 80 in December, and she's got a lot of physical pain that she lives with arthritis and other stuff. And I think in general she deals with a lot of it, but the whole time we were together, it was like a 9.5 for her. She really had a hard time physically, and she never complained. And I was just like, oh my God. And we one of the nights that we were together, I showed her a video of the last Justin talk, and I said, hey Mom, you want to see this? And she's been here before, and she's met Justin like 25 years ago, and I've told a lot of stories about him and my friends and my family, the school. So she knows a lot about different trips and discussions and whatever we do together. But I don't know that she'd seen like a video of his, and so she watched it, and I just kind of was in the other end of the room, like looking out the window, and just let her be with it. And it really was beautiful, because afterwards it led to a lot of discussion, and we got to talk about some really deep things, like blame. That struck her when Justin was describing that, and the monkey cage agitation, the mind. And she really like went there, and we just could meet together on a really deep level, like jumping off from watching this video. And then the next day we were driving from the Oregon coast to the Portland airport. And so we drove up the coast to Astoria and over to Portland to the airport for an airport hotel. And we had this day together in the car. And it was a beautiful drive along the coast, and it was beautiful weather and like that. And I got to ask her a lot of things about her childhood and her timeline, and just really like some things I knew and other things I didn't. And there were some rough spots in there for sure that she overcame. And ask her, like, she had me when she was 22, and she was like working for AT&T and like moving up in the ranks of AT&T and very career oriented. And then I came along, not planned. And so I got to talk to her like kind of like, what was going on? What happened? Like how did I come to be? And just like in a really like frank way. And that was just an example of just this time together where I asked her whatever I wanted, and then later on she asked me a bunch of stuff about my life, that questions that she had, just curious about, and like that, my finances and this whatever, like. And it was this experience where that time together, like nothing was left unasked in me, and nothing was left unrevealed in me to her. It was just like I got to meet her, and in this really beautiful and deep way. And I attribute that, to her for sure, and her receptivity, and just as I was describing before, how beautiful of a person she is, but also to what has changed in me to be able to be relaxed and just like to be able to go there and even lead a little bit, like, hey, let's go here, and her to meet me there, and sometimes her to say, let's go here, and me to meet her there without what is she going to think, without fear, basically. And I just feel very grateful to have had that time with her and been really able to have my state of being dictate this beautiful experience. The only traffic we hit was right before the Portland airport, and we'd been in the car for a while, and she was needing to go lay down and like that, and then we're like in 15-20 minutes of traffic before we go to our hotel, and I could feel this moment of like, okay, this is gone on, we need to get out of here, we got this time to wait, so how can we make this nice? And I put on Eva Cassidy, which she really likes Eva Cassidy, so our 20-minute wait was with this beautiful music, and so there was really no wait at all in that way. I want to talk about this, something that I think is a little trippy, a little esoteric, a little out there, a little woo woo, and for some reason, I feel like I have some attraction to this subject I'm about to talk to you about, which doesn't make sense in the rest of my makeup. I'm very practical. I'm very like, just, like not like too practical, really. And so somehow this thing, this like perspective or experience or view has trickled in or come out and manifests in me, and I feel like that I'm reluctant to go there because the other part of me or the parts of me would view this thing that I'm about to talk about as like it has judgments about it, really, and so it just shuts it down, and it, kind of like everything, anything that if you have a strong critic, whether it's out there or it tends to be here, and so it like leads to a reticence in general. So I think I've been a little irresponsible in not talking about it more, and I want to talk about it right now. And so really, it's like awareness or experience of a force of benevolence that we can rub up against, that is like a game changer, that just like changes everything. And the most, obvious example for that for me is being around Justin and being like seeing what's possible and being in proximity to him, and having experience over the years of like seeing how with his involvement, like grace came in and like changed the equation. So I'll give you a few examples. Not long after meeting him, maybe a year and a half after meeting Justin, I moved in with him and Amalthea and Johanna and Eva, who was my wife at the time, into a house in Santa Barbara. And Eva and I were living together in an apartment, and she was going to grad school and I was painting and like that. And by the time we met Justin, we had like accrued about $75,000 or $80,000 of student loan debt. And so a big preoccupation of mine was like, how are we gonna pay this off, So sometime maybe a month or two in after moving in with Justin, I brought this up, like, hey, we gotta make these payments. And we had this conversation where he basically said like this is more or less it, like, do you think that you could that could get paid off, or that you wouldn't have to worry about that debt, and because it was going to take a lot of my time and working to like pay off this debt. It's probably never even going to happen, but do you think that it's possible that it could be resolved, something along those lines? And of course my logical mind is like, what do you mean, loan payments and interest rates and it's fit 10 years at this rate, blah 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 blah. Like that's how I was thinking about it. And he was just like presenting this let's just see how it goes, like just don't pay on it right now, and could you let it see how it goes. And I remember like this doorway, similar to what Tish was describing, of like something in me was being required to like take a leap, because it didn't make any sense how this was going to happen, that this loan would just disappear. And I remember him saying something like, well, like grace touches everything in the world. If grace touches everything in the world, if that was a hypothesis, then would it not touch money or finance or loans? Would it not like touch that too? And I'm like, well, probably. So that was like as much his info as he was putting forth or whatever. And it was like, I think I was like leaning, like sitting there with it and leaning in that direction. And I think he may have said, have a little faith. And so I said, okay, I'm going to have a little faith. And faith is like, let's see what happens. Let's be open to what happens. Let's not see maybe even so much be hopeful that something happens, but let's at least be open and be willing to see that something else could be in operation. So in that specific thing, just to finish it off, I think it was like 7 years later, that loan, that all that debt was discharged. And the whole story of how that happened is, I could tell you about it another time, but it basically involved me, Justin helping me become versed in this legal thing that was going on, that I leaned into and presented in court, as represented myself in court, and the judge basically saying, like, I can't believe that you didn't hire a lawyer, but yeah, this loan's discharged. It's basically the short version of it. So again, through Justin's involvement of that whole way. So that was a long time ago, and now it's as I have gone along and I've accumulated evidence, it's now to the point for me where, like, I think if Justin's involved in any part of my life, that good things come. It's gonna go good. So just to make it a really coarse way, like if he's here, I believe that if I take anything and I just kind of wave it in his vicinity, that it will change that thing. So the waving it in reality is me, like, talking to him about it, me bringing it up, me asking a question, me revealing who I am. It could be a practical thing, it could be a financial thing, it could be, it's been everything. It's been everything in my life, like, whatever, like selling a house, buying a car, travel, kids, sex, any topic, human topic, I've waved it in his vicinity, and it's like completely changed that course of that thing in a good way, like always in a good way. So now it's like, it's kind of a habit or whatever, like a good habit, just to like, okay, it's just so much a part of me now to know that if he's involved, it's good. It's gonna go good. And sometimes good is like, what are you thinking? Or you're that sounds really, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, it doesn't mean that I get what I want. It just means that there's some influence that he has that diverts it in a good way. It brings something else in. It brings another element in. It brings another power in, really. So that I attribute that alchemy that's happening in that way to him and his state of being, and really his lack of separation, his connection to the creation, his lack of separation to me, to other people, that the small amount of I and a big amount of what's needed, that he has, that's what I attribute that ability, or that magnet that brings in grace into the situation, into the very practical moment situation, into the situation, like as big as into the world situation, basically, on a vibrational level, let's say. Is this going okay? You guys are woo! Here we go. So if it's lack of separation, he represents like the biggest example I have of another person, human being, with lack of separation. But it's lack of separation. It's lack of separation between people. So really what I think he's trying to pass on is how to teach us the methods and tools to have that naturalness come out that Tish was describing. Because that naturalness is fueled by creation, by something bigger. It's not our naturalness doesn't exist. We distort. We are natural from birth. We are natural at the core. But what we've done is just distort that naturalness out of I need, I want, me, I. Then it just goes off course. So really, the process is to rediscover that naturalness by being aware of the unnaturalness that has accumulated on. And through that awareness, that unnaturalness falls off, and then the naturalness arises. And then that naturalness brings that power to us, to our situation. So part of our dynamic or our work is to make use of one another, our fellow human beings, to make that separation disappear, to work together, to be in it with each other, to be involved in each other's lives, to do things together, because it's just like it encourages this lack of separation. It's like now there's a we instead of an I. And so this bringing something like I was talking about, I'm going to bring this topic to Justin. I've seen that if it's the same thing if I bring it to other people, whatever the bringing of it looks like. Hey, you want to go take a bike ride? Hey, let's talk about this. Hey, I have a question. Whatever it looks like, that the bringing of it, the putting something that's in here out into the middle, even if the middle is one other person or if the middle's 5 people, that there's something magical that happens about bringing it out into other people's awareness. That there's an alchemy that can happen in that process. And like that is like that's magic. Like that is magic. That what occurs from that, or what can occur from that, and what I've seen occur from that, is just like it's amazing. It changes the whole formula. So, a small example. Tish a couple of days ago brought up this thing about like, basically like, I want to carpool to town more. Like, why am I always going to town on my own? And I think that there's some benefit to working it out with people. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I don't know, a couple of days later, I don't know who instigated it, but I'm finding myself on last 2 days ago going to town with Mopani and Johanna and me. We went to town together, and we all got our errands done. And it was very cool. It was a very cool time together. And on the way back from town, Mopani suggested we listen to a Science Friday. And there was this really cool Science Friday about an interview of a woman physicist who basically asks big questions like, what is time? What's the nature of the universe? Like, how do we know anything? What does it mean to know something? Things like that. So there were 2 things that came from it that I thought were cool. One was, she was saying like, I really am curious about questions and about things, and as soon as an answer starts to appear, I feel like something is about to be lost, because I'd rather be with the curiosity than I would with the answer. Like that's where like the juice is, and then as soon as an answer comes in, it's like, okay, great, but something's been lost there, which that's interesting, on any level if you take that to yourself. And then the other one that she had was, if as far as we know at this point, we're the only beings in the universe. I'm sure they're out there probably, but we don't know them yet. And of the beings on Earth, we appear to be the only being, it appears, that could like ask these questions, like what is time, or these deep questions. And if the Creator gave us the ability to ask these questions, is it not an obligation, like a moral obligation, to like entertain these questions, to like go into these questions, to be curious? Do we not owe it? So then yesterday we were talking about the things I was just describing, this Science Friday episode, and we had an exploration about, well, if anything is a human quality that's given, especially the finer human qualities, is there not an obligation to like help those manifest? So compassion, sense of humor, being able to recognize something came from before. Where did it come from? That there's like you didn't start it, like that there's a history, knowing about history, just like on and on and on. And there's all these beautiful human attributes that if we're given that, then maybe the creation is wanting us to go with those things in order to develop those things, to uncover those things, because it's our part of the bargain, basically. So that was the discussion, but really the point I'm making is that discussion and that exploration wouldn't have come if we hadn't gone to town together. I wasn't listening to Science Friday driving by myself. So someone had an idea So that the we-ness of that town trip changed how it went into a better way, a higher way, a more beautiful way. So that's just like a really practical example, but it just, I've seen it over and over again, that the more we, the less I, the more that this beauty can come through. And I think that this power, because it really is power that I'm describing, that becomes available with the lack of separation, with more we, that this power is the power that can change the world. It is the unlocking of the beautiful, high, fine qualities in humanity that can change the world. I think that, like, just, it's clear how much darkness there is out there, and if it hasn't like tipped over to like just we blow ourselves up or whatever, it must be being balanced somehow, because it's very heavy on this end, right? So there must be some balancing happening, and I think that this fineness that I'm describing is the balancing. It's like the unlocking of a human potential from an I to a we is what keeps this from tipping over into darkness. So, not that you still don't get to have I mean, I'm talking about going from 99.9% I to like 60% I, or maybe 50% I, but more like there's a balance between I and we, where like it's more of a view of, what do you need, or what's needed, or I'm not in need. If I'm not in need, what is needed is this, the natural awareness would go out to what's needed here. What do you need? Or, what's needed? Maybe that's needed to me to be quiet. Maybe it's needed for me to meditate. Maybe it's needed for me to read a deeper book. Maybe it's needed for me to drive to Sacramento today, which is what I'm doing after this. But the question of what's needed arises from less I. So if this balancing, I believe this is like my theory, or this is what I believe really, that is how it goes, that those individuals that are playing this role of keeping this part up, I think that it's I think that someone like Justin covers a huge weight of that, like covers a lot of that. But any fineness that can manifest in humanity is doing that part. And how many people are focused on prioritizing their life to uncover that fineness? So, like Justin talked about with last time he spoke about, it's beautiful that people are out, advocating for this cause or that cause or whatever it is, these important things. That's beautiful. But how many people are advocating for this cause? And if I feel any hunger to advocate for becoming more fine and helping out with this balance, then I think that's it's needed. And so in the way that I was describing, like waving something in Justin's proximity, like he's like, I don't know, it's like atomic energy, or just like power is running through him. So anything that comes in his vicinity gets impacted by it. Like the energy that is unobstructed coming through him, as it goes up to its source, it just gets more and more powerful. So it has the ability to change the world. It has the ability to keep us from blowing ourselves up. It's up to it, basically. And if we can align ourselves to be more conduits of that, then I think that that's a good thing. I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think it's a needed thing. And it's, it's basically my reality to a large extent in theory, but I hypothesize based on my experience that this is true, and I just know it in my gut that it's true. And not only based on theory, but based on my experience. Like, this is true. And like Tish was saying about prioritizing that, there's a door open. And prioritizing walking through that door, I think there's a door open here. And that it's a really important and big door, and it's a beautiful door. And the benefit to me, to the individual walking through that door, you get so much benefit. You get to have this openness, the way I was describing with my mom, that just makes life beautiful. That is a bonus of this endeavor that I'm describing. It wasn't me and my openness. It was I was gifted that receptivity, or that willing to go there. Just as an example of one of many, I was gifted that because of my willingness to walk through these doors, or stay on the path and try to uncover. So we get this beautiful bonus life as a byproduct of it, but because it's probably, basically we're going to need some reward along the way. It's like, oh, it needs it. Okay, great, it needs it. How much are we going to be in alignment with it needs it? So we obviously get paid off big time along the way. But it's important to remember that it or we need it. Like, humanity needs it. And if you feel a call for it, then this is a place where that can be developed, it can be uncovered, that naturalness that is our birthright. So it's here. Okay. Have a good day.